Great. So as was mentioned, you all have been, Georgia informed me that there have been a lot of snake sightings of late. And this is very typical for most places in India at this point of year. There are, the monsoons kind of activate a lot of species. It's also the season where a lot of snakes are being born, coming out of their eggs. So there are, baby snakes out. There are adult snakes which have been incubating their eggs and will now be free to go about their lives. So we do see an uptick in snake sightings around this time of year. And just to illustrate this, actually, maybe we'll do that at a different point. And so it's kind of important that we get to know a little bit about them. And what you're seeing here, the snake in the image here is one of the most beautiful snakes that we get in Bangalore. It's called a trinket snake. And you can identify it by, you see these two black markings on the neck. Very few other species have a marking like that. It's got a whole lot of other patterns and so on, but all individuals will always have this marking on them. Throughout India, there are many species, but we only have a small portion of them which are dangerous. Most of them are completely harmless to humans. Some have venom, and not all venom is equal. So snakes use venom to hunt their prey. It's used to defend themselves almost as a secondary function. So that's not the main use of it. And as a result, many venomous snakes are not dangerous to people because their venom is designed to paralyze small prey only, like a bird or a lizard. And when you get bitten by some of those snakes, it's equivalent almost to getting stung by a wasp or a bee. You'll have some pain and some swelling, but the symptoms would subside soon after. However, of the 300 odd snakes which are found in the country, a very small percentage, less than 10%, are dangerous to humans. And some of them are common, some of them are very rare. In Bangalore, we have about 20 species, give or take, and 4 of them are dangerous to humans. So if you look at, this is just a sample of records from the citizen science portal called iNaturalist, which shows different reports of snakes throughout the city. And you can see that there's no part of Bangalore that is devoid of snakes. They're found much easier as you go further out, but you can find them right in the middle at MG Road as well. And some of the more common ones, we'll start off with one of the most frequently seen snakes in the country. It's the rat snake. It has many different names. In Kannada, it's called Kerehavu. In Hindi, it's often called Dhaman. And they are very large, very active and fast snakes. You will see them throughout the city. They do really well next to people. And they primarily hunt rodents. That's how they get their name. They're often confused for a cobra. But if you look at this one, this is a newborn. And if you look at the tail area where my cursor is, there are very prominent black markings along the tail. And there are these thin crisscrossed bands, which make it quite easy to identify. The other portion, which is quite revealing, is if you get to see the head. I'll move back to the previous image. There are distinctive black stripes along the lips, along these edges of these scales, and it almost looks like it's showing, teeth. So whether you see the head or the snake or the tail of the snake, it's possible to identify it and separate it from a cobra. They grow very large. The one in the image on your left is almost 6.5 feet long, and they do get even bigger than that if they get older. But regardless of age, you will still see the same patterns where these black markings are they're very hard to miss. This is another individual from the Western Ghats. Depending on the region, they may look different. This one is a bit more gray-brown. The ones that you get in Bangalore are, you can get this color, you can get them slightly yellowish or greenish, and if you were to go to some parts of Kerala or even way up north in Haryana, the rat snake is more dark, almost black. This is another species which is harmless. It's a smaller snake called the striped keelback. They come in many different colors as well. This individual, you can see this brilliant like vermilion or crimson red poking out from in between some of the scales. So that's actually the skin color underneath. And if the snake gets scared and puffs up its body, this color becomes really prominent. And it's I suppose it could be seen as a warning sign, but it's a bluff. This is not a dangerous species to be around. We get another version in Bangalore as well, which instead of having red has almost a sky blue or a whitish color. So this is a species which is associated with places which have good rainfall, also farmland. You'll see them very often next to small ponds or in agricultural fields. And one of the snakes that I have the most experience with is its cousin, the checkered keelback. This is also called the water snake in many different languages. And you will find them, this is probably the most common snake in the whole country. They do well in cities, they do well in undeveloped areas. They have any place where there is fresh water, you will find these guys. And that's probably because of their diet. They tend to feed mostly on things which are found around water. So a lot of amphibians, a lot of fish, and you'll see them both at day or at nighttime. You can find them in anything from a stream to a well to a gutter to a river. These guys are extremely prolific. If you find a good quality lake near your house, you can find 5, 10 of them in a day. So it gets its name from a very prominent pattern that some individuals have. This is not a rule, of course. There are others which look different, but you can see that the markings over here look almost like checks of a chessboard. And when the individuals are patterned so prominently, it's easy to identify them. But occasionally you will have others. This is from Coorg, where there is almost no pattern. However, you can still see remnants. Almost all of the individuals will have this, where there are 2 stripes, one going to the end of the mouth, and the other just straight down from the eye. And whether it's this individual, you can see it here as well, or the first one, it's visible in some form. So this is one snake which you can easily identify. And no, it's not a 2-headed snake, although that would be quite interesting. But this is a species which, it's very, very, sometimes you will get them in large numbers. And quite often, if there's a family group, they will be basking together, hunting together. There is some knowledge that shows that they can cooperatively hunt as well. This is a photo from your own compound. And here you can see this one is a beautiful greenish yellow color. And the checks are much smaller, but they are still visible. Unfortunately, I can't see the side of the face, but I could bet that those 2 stripes below the eye are still visible. This is another species. There's actually a whole group of snakes called wolf snakes. And in Bangalore, there are many species. The one that you're looking at over here is the Indian wolf snake. And these are relatively small snakes. They're about a foot or 2 long usually, and they come out at dark. You will almost never see these guys during the day. They are phobic of light, and so they will shy away from any kind of sunlight. And in fact, you can see that the one on the right, it's hidden its head all the way under its coils, and that's because this was seen in the day. This is one of the defensive strategies that they do. They hide themselves from the light. The Indian wolf snake is not very often seen in Bangalore. This is another view where you can see the head clearly. And you can see the eyes are small and almost completely dark. You can't see a pupil. This is characteristic of a lot of snakes which have great night vision. They don't need large eyes to see far distances during the daytime. This is a closely related cousin called the Anamalai or the flowery wolf snake. They are probably the most common ones which you get in South India. And very often you will find them this is outside our house. There's one which is in the stone wall, and all that you'll see is a small head poking out. So if any of you are particularly interested, one good way is to go around after dark with a flashlight and check between rock crevices, under tree bark. These guys are excellent climbers, so you can often see them scaling almost smooth walls. This is about 3 feet off the ground, but we've seen them, closer to 10 feet up as well. They are not dangerous, but they do like to climb, and they do, as a result, we often see them near our houses. I suspect it's because of the geckos which are on our, which are attracted to the lights at our front porches. The lights attract insects, the insects attract geckos, and the geckos in turn attract wolf snakes. It's not an uncommon snake, but it is a little harder to spot, is the vine snake. These are very specially adapted snakes which have quite amazing camouflage, to the point at which if you spot one, and it's well camouflaged. I've had several instances where they don't try to escape. They're almost so certain of how well they're blending into their surroundings that they don't try and get away. They are slow-moving snakes. They usually look just like a vine, and the head is shaped also, like a leaf almost. But pay attention to how the body looks, right? So this is the uniform parrot green color. But if it is harassed, or if the snake is agitated,
if there's any guard dogs,
it can show quite a formidable threat display. They open their mouth and
dog just come and attack
inflate their bodies, and you can see this brilliant black and white pattern underneath. So this is mostly to scare off predators. If you look closely, you can even see small teeth. This is one of the snakes which has venom, but it's very mild, so it can't really harm a human. But they have venom which comes out of the fangs over here underneath their eyes. And this is a closer look at one. You'll see that there's many strange things about this guy. So apart from the shape of the head, the shape of the pupil is also interesting. Not many animals have these horizontal pupils. And it's almost like a goat or a horse or a cuttlefish or an octopus. They have similar pupils as well. And there is evidence to show that these snakes have very, very good vision. They use it to be able to hunt prey, even in between thick foliage, and they rely on their vision more than any other sense. This is not a great image, but it is from very close to your own compound. This is from IBAB, Institute of Bioinformatics and Biotech, I think, in Electronic City. So I think straight line distance, that's just a kilometer or two or less than from your own property. This image is from, I think, a year and a half ago. So it's very likely that you do have these guys around, and I'm hopeful that you do see them. So we've covered most of the harmless snakes, and we just want to spend a little time with the ones which we need to be watchful for. The one that everyone knows is the spectacled cobra, or Nagarahabu. It is a medically significant snake. They do have the potential to kill. However, they are relatively mild-mannered. So they do everything in their power to avoid biting usually. And so they give you a visual signal, which is this hood that you can see being spread. And if you see the back of it, there's also a beautiful pattern on it. And that's a very alarming signal. It's a sign to stay away. They'll also hiss, and cobras will even do a false strike, where they will strike towards you, but they will hit the ground instead. And so they give you every opportunity to escape usually. And they prefer to bite only as a last resort. We've been having a bit of fun with cobras. These are 3 images from around my home. What we found is about a year ago we started doing this. We would try to identify individuals and see if we were catching them more than once. You can do this with cobras and a few other snakes because the hood pattern is very, very different for each of them. All the 3 snakes that you're seeing are different individuals. You can see that although the center and the left one look very similar, the central one has a missing portion of the outline here and a couple of smaller gaps in the black border here, which is not the case here. Here, the edges in this portion are much fainter. So there are subtle differences, and we have found, for instance, the one in the center was caught, I think, 5 or 6 times. This image is from a few weeks ago from a friend of mine who does rescues out of Whitefield, and he has been getting a lot of baby cobras of late. And so these were 12 different snakes which he caught in the span of a week. And he's showing that they too have very, very different patterns. The interesting thing is that the hood pattern is, it doesn't change as they grow. So 10 years down the line, if he catches one of these guys, he will be able to tell for sure that it's the same snake. Another one of the venomous snakes around, little less common, is the crate. It's a cousin of the cobras, and it too comes out only after dark. It looks a lot like the wolf snake which I showed you earlier, which is a thin black snake with white stripes on it. There are subtle differences, but in general, if you see a black snake at night and it has these bands on it, or it's good to give it a lot of space, maybe take some pictures so that someone can help identify it. But this is one species which you do need to be very careful about, and bites from it may not hurt a lot. They may not show symptoms immediately, but they are indeed life-threatening, so they should be treated as a medical emergency. And this is the Russell's viper. It is one of the most common snakes in South India, and they are more associated with agricultural land. So they do fairly well in cities as well, and but they prefer not to come as close to houses as cobras and wolf snakes and rat snakes do. They feed almost exclusively on rodents. You will almost never find one of these snakes taking a frog, for instance. They're very, very heavy-bodied, and they can have a very, very fast strike and an aggressive disposition. So this is one of the snakes which is probably the most difficult to handle. And as you can see in the leaf litter, it has actually fairly good camouflage. And sometimes it's extremely difficult to see one of these guys unless they're out in the open. They prefer to come out more after dark, but you do see them during the day occasionally as well. This is a newborn Russell's viper, and here it is assumed the classic defensive posture, which is it keeps its head more or less in the center and wraps its body around, almost to make a perfect circle. And they will, from this position, they can strike out in almost any direction. But before they do that, they will give out a characteristic hiss. It's a very loud hiss, and people akin it to a pressure cooker sound. So this is a short video where it's hissing. So you can actually see them hissing, which is quite incredible. This is what you would typically expect once a Russell's viper gets agitated. The last snake which you need to be a little watchful for is the saw-scaled viper. It is, I would say, one of the rarest snakes in Bangalore. You are very unlikely to see it. And it seems that it's not tolerant of, urban development. So it seems to be going extinct within the city. It was fairly common about 20 years ago, and now there are hardly any records from within city limits. It's a very small snake, so it is easy to not see it and to step on it. But the snake only grows about, a foot and a half long usually. They are more associated with dry, rocky landscapes. You do find them in the Western Ghats as well, though, along the coast especially. And typically during the day, they will be hiding underneath rocks or at the base of thorny plants. So they are, this is a group of snakes called carpet vipers, and you find them all the way from the Middle East and parts of Africa up to here. They are primarily a desert ecosystem evolved snake, but they do fairly well in tropical countries like India. This is just to show a bit of scale. I'm not sure how clear it is, but this impression to the right of the snake in the sand is a paw print by a dog. So the snake fits almost within that footprint. So they are really tiny, and that's what makes them extremely difficult to spot. In a country like ours, we have so many, we're a melting pot of cultures, and every region of India, it seems, has many different superstitions, myths, stories surrounding snakes. There are very common ones which pervade, that snakes drink milk. Seeing snakes at certain places or times is auspicious or a sign of good luck. If you kill a snake, its mate will come and take revenge on you. There are a lot of myths that we have, and I don't think there's really time to go into each and every one. But I will just say that take local wisdom with regards to snakes, especially with a pinch of salt. It's not always founded on a deep understanding, but most often it is some form of cautionary tale, which serves to help people avoid conflict. And snakes also face a fair deal of threats, which we may or may not think about. The most obvious ones are, I'm sorry for the graphic image, but crossing roads and vehicular traffic. Many snakes get run over, and if you take a drive in any urban area at night, any rural area at night these days, during the rainy season, you will see a dead snake after some time. They come to roads to soak up the heat which stays on the tarmac, but they're often not fast enough to get away from a speeding vehicle. So in and around your property, if there are roads which are less driven on, I would recommend, driving slow, especially after dark. It is sometimes difficult to see a snake, and give them the right of way. They will get out of your way at some point. The next most obvious threat to snakes is, this is an image again from within your property. And I'm sorry I've used these images in my presentation without taking permission, but I hope that's okay. The snakes are often targeted in and around urban areas by cats. Domestic cats are wonderful pets, but they do wreak havoc on wildlife all over. They are, even if you feed them really well, cats will hunt a lot, and they are probably one of the most destructive animals in the planet after humans. So they completely turn ecosystems upside down. So the rat snake, which you're seeing in this image, has survived his his tussle with the cat, but I don't know for how long. Oh, and the cat is just about visible over here. You can see its paw. And of course, probably the most unfortunate threat to snakes is our own prejudice. We have rapid urban development at this point, where most of us are living in properties where 50 years ago it would have just been farmland, and there would have been a teeming population of snakes most likely. But the gentrification of these landscapes and the fact that urban folk like ourselves are moving into them means that we don't really have the same kind of connect with the landscape as we would if we had been brought up there. So whenever we do see a snake, it's a sign of it's a situation where we panic, and very often the snake is killed. This is despite the fact that we have laws against killing snakes. We have superstitions which say that it's a bad omen if you kill one. Fear often grabs us, takes over us, and safety is the most prominent concern, and the snake pays with its life. So this is one of the threats of snakes which we can very, very simply fix, but it requires us to really, really be present in that situation and think rather than react. So what do I do when I see a snake? It's a question I get asked very often, and it's very simple, I think. If it's out in the open, if it's not inside someone's house, if it's not near your front door, it's not really a threat. Snakes will often go the way they came, and especially if they detect that there are people around, snakes are terrified of people. They will hightail out of there if they have the opportunity. So if we give them space and we don't confine them, surround them, agitate them, the snake will move on by itself. So yes, the most important point to remember is that yes, a few snakes may be dangerous, but none of them wants to come close to people, and it's best to leave it alone where possible. Getting close to a snake, trying to capture it, releasing it elsewhere, it's putting people at risk, it's putting the snake at risk, it's playing God with ecosystems and deciding that some things belong and some things do not. So where possible, it's better to avoid all of it and leave the snake alone. Of course, inform the community, show photographs if possible, so that people are aware, people know that they should be alert. It's important to remember that yes, we need to be alert and snakes are a risk, but everything that we do, many things that we do in everyday life are a risk. Getting into a car to go across the city is far more dangerous than living alongside a venomous snake. When you see a snake, give it room. This is part of that. Keep people, especially children and pets, especially cats and dogs, away. And of course, alert anyone who might be driving in the area. You don't want them to run over it or to park their car nearby and the snake to, go into the chassis somehow. And if you are able to, from a safe distance, a photo or a video will go a long way. Many people may be able to help identify it later on. And if it's a harmless species, you'll know that it's fine to have it around. If it's a venomous species, you know to look out for it, and that people do need to be careful at that point. I find that watching snakes is extremely fascinating. So I'd highly encourage that if you get the chance, just sit and watch it. Snakes do all sorts of cool things. I recently saw a very, very interesting series of photographs where a snake in the US was found climbing a tree, and there was a colony of spiders, and it watched the spiders for about 20 minutes and then chose to hunt it. And that's one of the few instances in the whole world where snakes have been seen eating spiders. So watching snakes, you can find out really, really cool things. However, sometimes you do need to do a rescue. And in this case, I would highly recommend that if you don't know what you're doing, please don't attempt to engage with the snake yourself. It's again putting you and the snake at risk, and asking someone else who does not have training to do it just shifts the responsibility onto them. So especially if these are people who work for you or don't have the power to question your decision, try to avoid putting them in a difficult position. If they are willing to do it, that's different. If they have experience, that's different. But if this is not part of their job profile, I would avoid it. There are rescuers throughout the city. We all have access to them now, especially now that the lockdowns are lifting. So I would highly recommend calling one of them and watching the snake until they come. Many rescuers get up to 10 to 15 snake calls a day, and they will prioritize the ones which are of higher concern. So if you see a snake in the garden, or you see a snake and you took your eyes off it and it's disappeared now, the rescuer is less likely to come, as opposed to if you call them and you say that it's in your bedroom. So do call them, but do call them only if it's absolutely necessary. If a snake is indoors, you want to make sure that it doesn't have full access to the building. So figure out which room the snake is in, and if possible, close the doors and the windows to that room so that you know that the snake is going to be there when a rescuer comes. If there is furniture like cupboards and shelving, you want to try and be watchful that the snake doesn't go into it. But if possible, watch the snake even while it's in the room. Keep yourself safe at all times, of course. But once a snake is inside a room, it is very unlikely to try and escape by itself. So it is fairly safe to watch it. They will usually curl up and just wait for you to go away. When a snake is caught, I think it's best for everybody and the snake if it's released immediately and it's released not too far away. Snakes do have territories, and there is some amount of evidence to show that, just like if you take a dog out of its neighborhood, it will be completely, it won't know where to access food, water, shelter, and snakes apparently have a very similar set where they do form territories, and when you take them out, they don't live for very long. So if you take a snake out and you may be doing this out of the goodness of your heart, where you take it to a forest because that was what you consider its natural environment to be, and you release it there, it could just be that you are sentencing it to a very slow and painful death. A lot of rescuers also do this. They catch many snakes and they release them in other places. So if you do call a rescuer, please do ask them to release it nearby. There are several NGOs which engage in wildlife rescue, not just snakes, all sorts of wildlife. So I would highly recommend that screenshot this, keep it easily accessible so that when an emergency does come up, you have the tools with you. There is also a protocol which you already have, where the judge, maybe you can correct me, the supervisor of the security and the security staff and the facility manager will respond to snake calls.
Yeah, I think that is the protocol, what is there here currently. If a snake is spotted and if it's venomous, the residents contact the security phone number.
Yeah.
And if that is not reachable, the facility manager and supervisor numbers are also available. And one of the staff is actually reasonably trained, and he volunteers to catch the snake and relocate it.
Okay. Yeah. So my apologies, I forgot to include their numbers here. But yes, do inform security, and if the situation is difficult, sometimes a snake is very difficult to remove from where it is. So these are always fallback NGOs that you can contact, and they are 24/7. They will respond to a call. People for Animals is based in South Bangalore near Kengeri. Prani Pet Sanctuary is a bit closer to you. They're off the Kanakpura Road. And ARRC is in North Bangalore near Horamavu. But all of these three places operate throughout the city. So they will put you onto a rescuer near you. There's also the BBMP Wildlife Cell, who have about 20 rescuers around the city. So they are, I haven't included their number, but they are also an option. Sorry, there was a question.
Yeah, Chayant, so far, in the last 2 to 3 months time frame, we spotted, I think, 3 or 4 different type of snakes, and they were relocated to a nearby area. So just opposite Niladri Road, there is a barren land with some amount of forest, I would say. So that's where they are relocated. But then we were ourselves not very sure whether it's a good idea to do that and leave them nearby, just outside of these premises and other side of the road. Because once we know for sure, once the snake returns, to our community. So what should be a good practice here?
Well, I think if you're doing so, what I do, we get about in my neighborhood, we're getting around 100 to 150 snake calls every year. That works out to about once or twice a week. And we also do have a similar situation where there are cobras and Russell's vipers and all these other snakes. We generally only relocate if it's a venomous one and it's close to someone's house. And when we relocate, we make sure not to take the snake more than 200-300 meters from where we caught it. Very often, we're finding snakes at boundary houses. So they would have probably come in from the neighboring plot. And so we just take them across the wall. Nowadays with cobras, I take them, 50 to 70 meters from where they've been caught, and I leave them there. The issue that might come up is that, as your property, as the landscape gets more and more developed, you will have neighbors who will have a problem with it. The other potential issue is that, if the snake is trying to cross the road and stuff, it will be run over and whatnot. You can't really control for all of this stuff. But one thing that I have noticed, we've gotten some cobras which we've now caught, 10, 12 times. And I view this as it's a sign that our rescue practices are not negatively impacting the snake. It's still surviving. So finding the same snake again and again is not a problem. It's more important that when the situation arises where it's close to a person, you're taking it out of that immediate danger. And you're taking people also out of the immediate danger. But if you remove a snake altogether, you're, that niche that snake was using is open and another snake will take it. So if if you remove a rat snake, the next snake which takes its place could be a much more dangerous species to have.
Got it.
So go
on. One question out of my own curiosity. So, will there be an instance, or has there been an instance where a snake attacked a human without the human intervening, or without the human attacking the snake?
Well, no. It may not be an intentional attack, but a lot of snake bites happen unintentionally. So, when you're walking and you step on a snake without seeing it, or lie on it, or, sit on it or something. We actually had a disturbing case a few years back where a cobra managed to get into someone's house without them knowing. And it had curled up on their sofa. And they sat on it without realizing it. So they sat on it for a good half an hour, I think. And when they got up, they looked down and they saw that there was a dead cobra on it. So a lot of bites do happen because of it's completely unintentional. But snakes will not attack you if they don't feel threatened, if they don't feel provoked. It's also a risk for them because attacking does expend energy. It does waste their venom, which they need for, catching prey. And it's an expensive thing for them to produce that. And also it puts them at harm's way. So yeah, the snakes will almost never attack you if you see them, give them space and allow them to move. Shall I move forward?
Chayant, what more topics do we have? I mean, should we take more questions at this point, or do you want to wind up and we will take the remaining questions? I can see two raised hands.
Let me just preview. So we have
okay.
a few safety measures and what to do if there's a bite, and then we wrap up.
Okay.
So I'm going to just coast through some of these because it's not important that we remember all of these parts.
Okay. So then I think we can wait for you to wrap up these two last topics, and then we will go back to questions. I've noted the names of people who have raised hands. We'll come to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm going to go over time, but let's just keep with it. So yeah, keeping safe is mostly about keeping alert. And that means that, after dark, when you can't see that well, make sure that people are using a torch. It's okay if you're walking on well-lit paths, but if there are places in your compounds which are dark, do use a flashlight. Especially for children or people working in gardening, if you can't see where you're putting your hands, it is a bit dangerous. So do use a stick, to move vegetation aside and then put your hands in if you have to. Very often, children's, whatever balls or whatever it is, go into vegetation, and reaching into it, you are putting someone at risk. In this time of year, snakes are looking for dry, dark spaces to take shelter from the rain. So if you have footwear outside, it's really important to check it. It's not just snakes which could have chosen it as a space to rest. There are scorpions, there are insects of different kinds. So do shake out your shoes if you're putting them on and they're outside. And one way to just avoid having snakes around your home is to make sure that there are fewer places for them there are fewer attractants. So there are fewer places for them to take shelter, with like brick piles, any kind of construction material, or leaf mulch. Keep that clear from around houses. And if you're feeding strays, I would say make sure that food is not being left out overnight. It will attract rats otherwise, and the rats will in turn attract snakes. So if we're a little bit smart about these three things, we can greatly reduce the chances of encountering a snake. I recommend, windows and doors all have meshes. We anyway use these for mosquitoes, but they do an equally good job keeping snakes out. And the same goes for open drains. If there are many openings near where people walk, they are a bit more of a hassle to clean, but the safety payoffs are far outweigh the work that goes in, I think. Many snakes will use stormwater drains to rest in and to get from one place to another. So keeping the entrances meshed will really prevent a lot of untoward accidents. If someone's bitten by a snake, it's not essential. You can choose to get a photo, but don't try to engage with the snake. Keep the person calm as much as possible. Most of the snakes, as we went over, are harmless, and even a bite from any of the venomous snakes is easily treatable for all of us who have quick access to a hospital. It's important that, if you're wearing rings, bracelets, anything which can constrain your body at any point, anklets, they are removed. In case there is swelling, you don't want this to stop blood flow. And the first thing to do is to remove any kind of constraining clothing or jewelry. And if you're bitten on, the hand or the leg, just keep that area still. So the trick is to, treat it almost like a fracture. When you get a fracture, you want to immobilize the part which is fractured. So it's as simple as putting a splint and tying a very loose bandage just to make sure that it does not move. you don't want to tie too tightly. You don't want to restrict the blood flow, but just keep the area still and below the heart level. And once these things are done, move immediately to a hospital. These are two options which are near your area, George informed me. And both of them, if you're in the hospital within, half an hour or so, you're good to go. Both these hospitals are equipped to treat snakebite victims, and they have ICU facilities. So they will also be dealing with many snake bites a day. So they are excellent options. Any symptoms that the snakebite victim has, it's important that one person note it down and give this information to a doctor. And of course, inform the association, or you can also reach out to me via George or anyone for assistance in this kind of situation. We will guide you. There are some things that you should not do for many reasons, but basically don't try things which you've seen or heard about, like cutting the bite, or trying to suck the venom out, or maybe if you've been very stressed by the experience, you'd want to have a drink or a smoke. These are all not recommended. They not only can cause adverse effects, but you're wasting a lot of time. And after a snake bite, acting quickly is imperative. There's also sadly not enough evidence that alternative or traditional medicine can treat snakebite effectively. It's best to get treatment in a hospital. I'm not going to go over the symptoms for each species, although we do have slides for that, because I don't think it's going to be retained, and it's not really serving any purpose. But yeah, I'd like to just spend a quick minute on snake rescue tools. So the most commonly used tools are hooks, which you see below and in action with this cobra here, and tongs. I've seen the images from your place. You have a set of tongs that's very similar to this. These are great. Tongs are easier for people who have a little less experience. They restrain the snake, and tongs which are shaped like this, which have a wide flat surface, are great for snakes. It's best if when you put your finger in this and the tongue is squeezed, your finger shouldn't be you shouldn't be in pain. So you don't want to put the snake in something that can hurt it. Unfortunately, if you go onto Amazon or whatever and you search for a snake tongue or a snake catching stick, you will get a lot of results like this. These look very similar, but as you can see, they're much thinner. They have serrated edges. Some of these have very sharp edges, and they are essentially modified fruit pickers. So do avoid these. If you have something like this as well, I would highly recommend filing these down so that you cannot you can't puncture the skin of the snake, and also maybe insulating them with some rubber gaskets so that they put pressure on a wider area and much more gently. Any of these, both tongs and hooks, they're an excellent tool, but they can also be a weapon if they're used by the wrong person. So it's important that only people who really are comfortable and know what they're doing use them. Hooks do take a bit more experience, but they are far less stressful for the snake. So yeah, I would say that it's great if we can learn to let the harmless snakes be. It may be an unpopular opinion, but snakes are just a natural part of the ecosystem. And if you see a harmless snake around you, it's just as much of a danger to you as seeing a butterfly or a squirrel around. They are part of the landscape, they belong, and they're not going to do anything. They're good to have around. During a rescue, just keep the relocation minimal and the contact with the snake also minimal if possible. You want them to be efficient and released close by. Our practice has been no more than 500 meters. So I would recommend this if it's possible. There's usually rescuers who operate within the city will often release snakes into drains nearby, so that they're not relocating them, but they're also not putting them right back next to people. There are several resources on YouTube. You can screenshot these or just type in these. The Madras Crocodile Bank, the Kalinga Center for Reptile Ecology, and the central video is by, he goes by Vegan Cobra, but his name is Yatin. He's based out of Bangalore. All of them show how to catch venomous snakes without stressing them out very, very ethically. So I highly recommend that you give these a watch so that you're familiar with best practices. This is, for instance, a cobra, which is our neighbor. And this individual has been caught, I think, 8 times or so near our house. It's at a neighbor's front door. He has a young kid, he has a young son, and he himself came of his own volition to us. He freaked out the first time he saw the snake. And then after that, whenever he would see it, he would call us, but he would tell us, please don't catch it, please don't disturb it, let's just watch it. And the payoff was that we've seen this happen twice now. The snake came and we watched it feed on toads twice. This photograph which you're seeing here is a particularly large toad that it had caught. And we sat next to the snake maybe 2 meters away, watching it for close to 3.5 hours. So you can live very safely around them as long as you know how to keep yourself and the snake safe. This is our current neighbor. This guy has been hanging around from March or so, and we keep running into him. He's a very big cobra, and he hisses a lot. He's really scary, but he doesn't really. It's all a bit of a bluff. He's never acted aggressively towards us. And yeah, it's not, as I said, it's not the worst thing in the world to see that the same snake is coming back. It just means that it's part of its territory for now, and it may not be later on. By doing the rescue practices that we have come up with, which is letting harmless snakes be and just removing the venomous ones to a nearby area, we found that the community has slowly shifted in their attitude towards snakes. And this is particularly true for children. So we've seen a lot more children of late. I've personally seen a lot more children willing to come up, and I try to, if it's a harmless snake, I try to show it to them. I found that this helps dispel fear a lot when they're able to actually touch it with their hands. Of course, in a very controlled and supervised fashion. But we have children now who are not freaking out so much, who just casually tell us that they saw a snake a few days later. And this is really, I think, how we want, to bring up people, because we want people to not freak out about just living in close to nature. And it's not just tolerance towards snakes. I think that the natural world itself is very interesting, and once you start observing snakes and being comfortable with them, you gain a greater depth to understanding nature in general. So we found a lot of people have moved from snake watching to insect watching, bird watching, plant watching. The natural world is full of connections, so this has really been a stepping stone to something more. The greatest impact has been that intentional killing of snakes has reduced hugely. I think you will have the same experience at your place. But I think the biggest take home is that this is a model which anyone can do anywhere. And it's very important that we as, citizens in India make that message heard. If you want to find out more about the snakes around you, there are several great resources. These are a few books. The one on the left is really great. It has a lot of local names of snakes, and it comes in multiple languages as well. So if you want to, have staff or anyone else who is not very comfortable in English engage with this, this is a great starting point. So the field guides, which are the center and the right book, are much more exhaustive, of course, and they're a little academic. But I think Khairi's book on the left is excellent for anyone who is even a casual interest in snakes. And some colleagues and I do organize educational sessions which are very hands-on. So we just had an event a couple of days ago which was specifically about searching for snakes at night. There is an upcoming event also which is combining nature watching with rock climbing. So if any of you have, these are appropriate for families, for children, for adults. If any of you have interest, please do screenshot this page and follow up. So yeah, I would like to end this over here. If any of you have questions, maybe we can open it up here.
Yeah, I think Duke of Geopolitics had raised hand first, so you can ask your question first, and then Praveen can ask your question after that.
Yes, please.
Yes. My question is not like a doubt. Like few months ago, I think 1 year ago, or a few years ago, I think it's like yeah, I remember in the basketball court there I saw a snake. Like me and my friend were playing cricket, and he hit the ball and it went to a corner, and then we saw a snake like come out. So I just wanted to like it's a black snake up prop, and I just wanted to know what species is it. It was like black in color, and it had a small white stripe at its back.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to identify snakes when people just describe them. I would say it's possible that it was either a krait or a wolf snake, but without a photo, I can't really be sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Praveen?
Yeah. Hi. Yes. So my question was very much on the snake bite protocol. Actually, I have two questions. The first one is that the first point you mentioned is that we have to take a photo. So it would be very quite often that during the panic, due to the panic, we might miss to take a photo and just panic out and freak out. So yeah, so I believe there are different antidotes if it's a cobra or a different, because some snakes attacks the nervous system, some snakes attacks the bloodstream or something like that. So my question is how important if is it to identify the snake that somebody is bitten with, and if not, and if a person, God forbid, is bitten and he is not able to identify or he could not able to identify what snake he was bitten of. So will it affect his treatment, and how important is it to identify the snake at first?
No, it is not. Getting a photo is definitely a bonus. So I did mention that it's not an essential thing. It's okay if the snake is not identified. In India, since I went through the 4 venomous snakes, right? There were 2 vipers, a krait, and a cobra. They do all have different venoms, but in India, the treatment for all of these snakes is the same. It is a polyvalent made out of, so it's actionable against all of them. And it's an antidote which is made from the venom of all 4 species. In other countries, you have monovalent with antivenoms which target individual species of snakes. But in India, it's the same across. So what would happen is that the symptoms would vary. For some people, there will be, for some snakes, there will be a lot of swelling. For some, there will be more neurological symptoms. They'll have difficulty breathing or keeping their eyes open or talking. And depending on the symptoms, you can get an idea as well. So if you supply the symptoms, the information to the doctor, they'll be able to narrow it down a bit. But once you get to a hospital, they will test the blood and they will see which venom seems to be active.
Got it. Yeah. So as I understand that, and I have another question here. Actually, I have in my garden something called a snake repellent plant. It's called Nagadali. Sappu or something. So I wanted to ask how, I mean, is there any study, does it help in repelling the snakes, or it's just, there is no, I mean, it doesn't have any scientific evidence?
Unfortunately, it does not. There has been, there are snake repellent plants in different cultures in different countries. So in India, we have a whole bunch. In different parts of India, we have different kinds of plants. These are even in the cultural mindset in parts of Africa as well. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that any particular plant, keeps snakes away. More, the more thing, I think the most effective thing that they do is they give us a bit of peace of mind. But snakes don't have much of an interest in plants beyond climbing them or taking shelter under them. So I would not put a lot of faith in that. The problem, I think, with believing too strongly in it is that it can give us this false reassurance, and that can make us a bit lax and relax in those areas, and not be mindful of our surroundings. So definitely, yes, plant it if it helps, but don't let your guard down.
Okay, thank you, Chayant. That's all for myself. Thank you.
George here. I think the other side of this is if your garden is well maintained, so that you so well maintained that you have picked and chosen a plant and taken care of it, and you're already aware of snakes and snake repellents. First of all, probably there is no leaf litter. You already probably have a well maintained garden, right? And you're aware of snake and prevention of bites. So probably such people don't end up getting bitten naturally. So maybe it could be. I'm not sure.
That's a good point. Well-maintained gardens offer fewer places for them to hide, and that combined with your own heightened awareness, you're not at a big risk. In fact, I would like to just take this moment to tell everybody that yes, there are a lot of snakes that you are coming across, that I've come across in my neighborhood. But the chances of a bite are very, very low. In India, most of the people who are bitten are people who are working in fields or gardening, or and when I mean gardening, I mean gardeners who do spend all their day gardening. They are people who engage in a lot of manual labor, construction. So these are the people who are putting their hands and feet very close to snakes, and these are the people who get bitten most. In urban landscapes, most of us are not putting our bodies in that kind of situation. So, and even if we do get bitten, our chances of a quick recovery are very high, because any good hospital is within half an hour's drive.
Correct. Right. And just one more question came to my mind. Last year there was because of this incidents, quite a few incidents of snakes that getting out. We sprinkled something, some white powder. Tom, George, you, along side of the border of the plants. I don't know if it's DDT or it had a very peculiar. It used to have a peculiar smell. So does that work actually, or? I mean, will it? I mean, it's certainly not good for the plants, because it's a little bit acidic in nature. So it's spoils the plants. It's a white color powder that we used to sprinkle all around the layout, along the especially around the drainage area. We used to sprinkle. Yeah. So does it work actually, or in favor or in against? I mean, is it poisonous for the the snakes? Also,
I would say that there's a good chance that it does work. It depends. I can't tell you for sure based on the description, because I don't know what the components are. But there are quite a few of these substances which are used. And
sorry. I remember that it's boric acid, I guess. It's
boric acid, right? Yeah. So this is very commonly used. It does not target snakes specifically. So it is literally putting poison around, and this will be detrimental to all the wildlife. I would say that if you have pets also, especially dogs, like to stick their feet in their noses and everything. Cats will be walking all over it. People also come into contact. So overall, it is effective, but it is a lot of risk to our lives as well, and to the lives of basically everything else. So I would avoid it. It will help sterilize your ecosystem, but I guess as a community, you also have to decide, whether that's a road you want to go down.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, and it was a very informative session. Thank you. That's all from us.
Thank you. Are there any more questions that are there?
No more raised hands. If anyone else has questions, they can unmute and ask directly.
I can also show the images which you shared, George.
I
Yes,
have
yes.
a question. Yeah. So
Yes, please.
when a snake bites, suppose we don't get a photo, right? So when we go to the hospital, if it is a non-venomous snake, will they be able to
That's right.
identify that it's non-venomous? And if they give the anti-venom, will that cause any issues?
Some people do have some people are allergic to antivenom. Some people may also have, a panic attack or anxiety-based symptoms as a response to being in that situation. So there are a lot of things that can happen even with a non-venomous bite, but it may not be possible to tell immediately. What doctors will do is they will do a test dose. So they will give a small amount of antivenom to see if there's a reaction. But generally the procedure is, unless you develop symptoms, they are not going to treat with antivenom. So they will err on the side of caution. They don't want you to have, some kind of resistance or allergic reaction to the antivenom. And it's not good for the body to have that foreign substance inside you unnecessarily. So yes, it's nothing to be concerned about. They do due diligence. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Also, they will be monitoring not just for symptoms within you, but they also test your blood to see if there are active venom compounds in it. And if there are not, then they won't treat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Also, all of the venomous snakes that are here can also give what's called a dry bite, where they bite you but they don't inject venom. They may do this consciously. They may not. They may have already used their venom up on some prey item, but it does happen. It happens a lot with cobras, especially. They may give you a mild dose of venom. So all of these things do vary. Yeah.
Sorry, and there is one more question. I mean, it would sound a little bit childish. I'd read some in the books that some people take snakes venom as a to give certain certain kind of a high in, and they digest the snake, and they become something. I used to see a serial called Chandrakanta. There used to be a person called, he could digest the venom, and his whole system was, I mean, he was part of his body actually could digest venom. And I've also seen some videos where they mix venom with milk and taking that and give a bit of a high. So how true is it? Is it really true, or it's just fake?
Yeah, I'm not sure about. So there's two things. One, you're talking about increased some kind of increased performance or virulence or something by consuming this. And the second thing you're talking about is some kind of psychoactive experience.
Right.
From what I know, there aren't many studies on the psychoactive effects of ingesting venom. It's as to digesting it, it's just a simple protein. So it's similar to how our saliva is several proteins and enzymes. Venom is a similar, more specialized version of that. So you can drink venom; it's not dangerous. But if you have like internal injuries in your mouth, like sores, or you can get this even after a dental procedure, or if you've brushed too hard, or you've eaten something like taco chips or whatever. there are microscopic lacerations inside your mouth, and taking venom then can still, cause a reaction. So it is a very dangerous thing to do. There's something else which people do to give themselves, same thing, some kind of high or, increased tolerance, which is called microdosing, where they take almost homeopathic amounts of venom and inject it into their bloodstream. This is it is at this point considered pseudoscience. There isn't enough evidence to show that it works, but a few individuals who have done it have been able to become semi-immune to that kind of venom, and they have survived proper bites from those snakes afterwards, and they've used their blood in transfusions to people who have been bitten, and it has been successful. So it's a new science. I'll retract that it's a pseudoscience, but we don't know enough about it.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
As to eating them, yeah, people do all sorts of strange things, but I don't think there's any evidence that works.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Shall we go over the photos which you've sent me, and we can just have people can even answer what they feel that the snakes are, and
yes,
all of them I think you
interesting.
can identify with the snake. Most of you would have also probably already seen these photos, but apart from the photographers, would other people like to guess what species we're looking at here?
This looks like a viper, is it?
This is, that's right. So this is the Russell's viper. You can see they have a very prominent marking. It's 3 rows of these spots, circular patterns on their back. One along the spine and one on either side. So,
and this is one of the top 4 poisonous snakes that you said that are in India, correct?
That's right. So yeah, this is, I can see that the tongs used here are also quite gentle. Yeah, they are a difficult snake to handle, so they are one that you do need to be very cautious around.
Do they have any similarities with the rattlesnake of US? Because the way they curl up and the way they hiss, though they don't have a rattle, but is there any similarity in their, in the way, are they more attacking nature, defensive nature?
They belong to the same family, which is the viper family, and so they have some similarities, which all vipers will share, not just rattlesnakes. There are pit vipers. There are a whole bunch of vipers across the world which have similar adaptations. So yeah, by and large, most vipers are quite heavily built, so they will give you a warning rather than try and escape. They will sit in one place and give you some kind of warning, like rattling their tail or hissing loudly. And by nature, they are ambush predators. So they will sit in one place, wait for their a rat or something to move past them, and then they will strike out at it. So yeah, in that case, they are similar, but they are not related very closely to rattlesnakes.
That's helpful, thanks.
So this is, I don't know how clearly you're all seeing this. Maybe you can go to a different image. Here you can, would anyone want to venture a guess?
Rat snake? This looks like a different rat snake.
That's right. You can see very clearly, you can't see the head too well, but you can see the patterns on the tail very clearly in this region. I'm not sure how clear this is. Maybe I can do this.
This is a cobra, right? Because of the spectacle cobra?
That's right. So this is, I mean, they don't always show the spectacle so clearly. Sometimes the hood is withdrawn and you can't see that pattern very well. But you can see it's a plain brown snake and there's very little in the way of markings or patterns on it, which is how a cobra which is not agitated will look.
We had a very funny situation where the spectacle cobra last year, very baby spectacle cobra, hid in the walls, and the walls were not deep. They were very, they were not even holes in the wall, but he managed to hide nicely, and that was pandemic time, so we couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in 2-3 days, it just went away.
Yeah,
Thankfully.
there's nothing you can do once they do that. But they do. I've noticed that many snakes will use, cracks in walls to hide in if they feel that people are around. So if people keep a little more distance, they are less likely to use those. The most often, like a cobra will most often go into a crack in a wall to hunt for something rather than to hide by itself. And that's usually, frogs or lizards which will be sleeping inside.
Correct. Right.
So this is also the same, I think it's the same snake. You can see the same pattern throughout the tail area as a rat snake. Would anyone want to tell me what this is? I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it a little clearer.
Is it a checkered keelback or the
That's right.
snake?
Excellent. Yeah, you can kind of see the checker markings. They're a bit small, but they're visible. And you can also clearly see the lines near the eye. And of
This
course,
wasn't from our layout.
oh, this wasn't your layout. Sorry, this is one of the
No,
photos which was clicked by a resident, but nearby, I guess.
It was in a well near Tottikallu.
Okay, my bad. I think I picked the wrong picture from Samyak Sai Naturalist account. I assumed everything is from CSV. My bad.
Yeah, so this is, the other giveaway is that you're seeing it near water. So that's a good indicator. Any snake can swim, but these guys are most found near water, I guess. There are more of the keelbacks. This one we already showed. Here it looks like a dead baby cobra. Here you can see the hood is not spread and the hood marking is still visible, but sometimes it's not so clear. So I would say that this is probably just a few days old, this particular baby. Anyone else? I hear a lot of silence.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, just want to check that. Is it true that cat keeps snakes away, or is it relevant?
Sorry, what keeps snakes away?
Cats in the surrounding areas.
They may not keep them away, but they will definitely kill them if they see them. And this is true not just for snakes; it's true for all wildlife. Anything which is small enough and slow enough for a cat to catch, it will catch.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I haven't heard any guesses, but this one is another rat snake. You can see just a faint hint of the black markings along the lips, which make it look a bit like teeth. It's a bit harder because we can't see the tail where the pattern is very clear. So this is a great example. This is another one, and you can nicely see that this one is an olive green or yellow version, whereas this one is a more rusty brown. So there is variation even where we are. Yeah, this is a nice challenge. Would anyone like to tell me what this is? So the head of the snake is somewhere here. We can neither see the head nor the tail. Samyak, maybe you can tell.
Okay, yeah, this is a rat snake.
Yeah, so you can see the tail patterns begin somewhere around here. The tail probably went quite a bit more, right?
Yeah, there were some other pictures too.
I don't know if we have another one close up of the neck area. And you can see, if you just see this much, it looks a bit like a cobra. It's very difficult to tell them apart when you just see one small part of the body. But here you have the tail portion where the markings are very, very evident, and there's no confusing it here. All right, so that looks like all the photos we have in our thing. I think we've shot well over time, George. So if there are no more questions, shall we conclude?
Yeah, I think we can conclude. If there are questions, if I get questions, I can maybe forward it to you, and then I can, get your answers to them through the WhatsApp group.
So I will, if there are specific educational resources which I have, I will send them to you, and you can maybe distribute them to the whole community. And in the meantime, yeah, please, everybody feel free to reach out to me directly or through George. George, please circulate my contact info if that's required. And if there are questions or doubts or anything that you'd like in future, you can always get in touch with me.
Okay. So I think we can, take a pause here because learning will continue. I'm sure through WhatsApp and other resources. So I hope this was a good start. And most of us know all these things. In that case, it's good to have a refresher. It's good to have some kind of some kind of a reassurance on some of these things which we already know. So special thanks to Chayant for in short notice coming to us and having a very tailor-made and interactive session. So a lot of the pictures and a lot of the facts were specific to CSV. So thanks a lot, Chayant, for that on behalf of all of us here, some 250 houses and more. So thanks a lot from on behalf of all of us. Also, thanks to Richa and Sanjeev from ECM for helping, putting the webinar together. Our security staff at Clubhouse has also listened to this. I'd encourage them to ask questions if they have, but I don't think they pinged. But so thanks to the ECM as well for helping to arrange this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for organizing.
Just hold on 1 second, Chayant. I think I heard somebody asking something. Just we can wait for 1 more minute.
I saw one raised hand earlier from Prabodh.
That was asked. Any other questions? Please go on.
सर हाँ मैं बोल रहा था सर इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन में स्नैक पकड़ने के लिए स्नैक कैचर नहीं होगा तो सर क्या दूसरा कुछ चीज़ से क्या हम लोग स्नैक पकड़ सकते हैं क्या?
Chayant, did you get it?
Sorry, it was a little faint to me.
Okay,
would you be able to repeat?
I'll ask.
हाँ मैं बोल रहा था सर कुछ इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन में स्नैक कैचर नहीं होगा तो सर कुछ दूसरा चीज़ से हम लोग स्नैक पकड़ सकते हैं क्या?
Okay, so what he's saying is if the trained person is not available in an emergency situation, maybe because of shift and all that, are there any alternate contacts available?
I mean, if you do come across something like that, you can always get in touch with me. We can find a rescuer, on slightly short notice. Yeah, but I will be sending a few more options to you directly, and you can circulate it amongst everybody.
Okay, तो वो थोड़ा एक contact list बना के रखते हैं.
And I see Milind said it might be helpful for an intro to myself. I'm sorry, I should have started with this. I'm a Bangalore-based ecologist and wildlife communicator. So my interests have been with mostly with birds and snakes in urban and in forested areas. And I've done a few studies on different parts of bird behavior in the Western Ghats and the Himalayas. But my fascination and my love affair with creepy crawlies, in particular snakes, has been there since I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I first saw them. And I think I began doing my snake catching most seriously around high school when I was about 16 or 17. So it's been close to 12 years now. And in that time, of the last 10 years, I've been doing 7 years, I've been doing a lot around our own community. We've encountered something like 800 or 900 snakes now. So yeah, I enjoy talking to people about them, helping them learn a bit more. And we also do informal training for people who want to start learning the basics about snake handling. Unfortunately, it's a bit more difficult to do that unless it's in person. But if there are people who are interested in this community, we can chat further later.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay, so let's wind up then, right? We've overshot by a good half an hour. So thanks a lot, Chayant. I hope a lot of us, I'm sure a lot of us will be in touch with you also going forward, exchanging information or participating in programs. So thanks a lot for spending your time with us. And thanks a lot, everybody who joined us on the Sunday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Shyam.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. We'll be in touch.